In the next roughly 40 minutes, I'll be talking about what we've been doing with UberAgent in the past months and so on, since we last saw each other and talked to each other at the last physical E2E VC. I'm very happy this digital version is happening. It's not the same as getting together physically, having a chat in person, having a beer or two together, as happens sometimes. I've done that once, I think, or twice. But anyway, it's still a great thing to do. And thank you very much, Alex and team, for organizing this. So, okay, let's dive right in. What do we have here? Now, if you've, okay, so give me a second here. Okay, now you should be seeing the slides the way they're supposed to show. So this should look unfamiliar if you're familiar with UberAgent. We've got not one UberAgent, but two. So we've got the UXM product and the ESA product. They stand for User Experience Monitoring and Endpoint Security Analytics. So what's the difference between the two? What do they do? So UberAgent UXM is what you know, the product you know, the product you've hopefully come to know and love at least a little bit. And it gives you all the great information, metrics, and everything you need to know to manage your user experience, to manage performance. It gives you information about any kind of native app that you've installed on your machines. It gives you a lot of detail on web apps, everything that's running in your browser. It gives you performance information, it helps you with sizing and so on. It helps with reliability issues, detects crashes, blue screens, delays, application delays, a lot of different things. It monitors your networking, checks if some of your apps are trying to access ports or hosts that are not available. So if you rename a server and just a small percentage of your apps cannot talk to try to talk to the old server name, UberAgent will see that and will help you fix it. It has very good and very detailed inventory of your machine hardware, of your software, of your applications. It's one of the most important features for many in the virtualization space is UberAgent's capability to show you what's going on during a user log-on, where that time, that's always too long, of course, where that time is actually spent, if it's in some kind of script, and if it is a script, what's happening in the script, what kind of commands are running, how long do they take, or is it group policy, is it something else? And so on and so on. So basically, we've rebranded the existing UberAgent as UberAgent UXM. And we've added a new product and put that next to it. This new product is UberAgent ESA. As the name implies, Endpoint Security Analytics. Obviously, it has something to do with security. So we'll be taking a deeper look at what UberAgent ESA is and what it can do in the next few slides. So in a nutshell, ESA takes what we already have with UXM. There's so much detailed information that's already available and that's already very helpful and relevant to security. And it adds specific and additional information on top of that. As you'll see in a few minutes, it has which I hope and think is a quite interesting approach to identifying suspicious behavior in applications. And it's not just an agent or a product that just picks up stuff on the endpoint and sends everything to a big SIEM or a big backend system like Splunk or something else. So it does not just dump the stuff in there, it tries to be selective and only send that kind of information and data to the backend that might actually be relevant later on. Okay, so what is that capability I just mentioned about being selective and helping with identifying risky behavior, or risky, suspicious? Yeah, it's basically the same. So we call that process tagging because it looks at everything that's happening on your endpoints with processes, anything that your applications and processes are doing, and it has a rule. It has a set of rules that are written in our own rule definition language, in ESA's rule definition language, and it tries to match rules to what's happening. And those rules have queries, and you can write queries on your own. We have we provide a quite extensive rule set that comes with the product. For example, there's one of the many rules that ESA ships with is that it tries to, it doesn't try, it succeeds in identifying child processes started by one of the many Office applications. So if Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or any of the other Office applications spawns some kind of child process, that's generally not a very good thing. There are a few legitimate cases where that is okay, but generally you don't want Office to start anything else, because when that happens, it's quite often something bad that's going on. So a macro running in embedded in one of your Word documents that suddenly tries to do some clever things and infect your environment, your network with malware. So that's one of the very, very common examples. So in general, you don't want Office to start anything else. And that's just one of the many things that UberAgent ESA detects and figures out of the box. By the way, Microsoft recommends being quite selective about what Office can do and cannot do. And if I'm not mistaken, it recommends not allowing any, I think, Outlook child processes. That's one thing I saw a while ago, I think. Okay, so with ESA, all of the processing happens on the endpoint. UberAgent ESA is basically, and the product is basically an endpoint agent, an extension to our existing agent. And the good thing about that is that it can, as I mentioned earlier on that previous slide, it can do some analysis and filtering before sending the data off to a backend system for storage and later further processing. So that's a very good thing that helps reduce the data volume that's being stored in your SIEM. And with some systems like Splunk, for example, where you typically pay by data volume, in other words, by the volume of data you send to the system, a tool like UberAgent ESA helps reduce the amount of the licensing cost that you have with the SIEM. Okay, so let's take a bit another look at what that process tagging actually can react to, what kind of events it supports. So for example, it looks at every process start or stop event and matches and checks if any rules match process start. What does it mean? So whenever a new process is started, every single process on all of your endpoints, UberAgent ESA will analyze if that specific process, it could be a command line, it could be a script, it could be anything at all, if it matches the properties laid out in a rule. So for example, going back to that office child process example, if you have a rule that says if the parent process that is creating this process, if it is winword.exe, for example, then this child process could be suspicious. So that's one of the a little bit simplified, of course, that's one of the things that you could do with a process start-stop event. Then we have image load events. Image load means that's not, image doesn't really, refer to a picture here, obviously. It refers to a PE image, portable executable image. So typically when a DLL is loaded, that kind of event fires. So you can react to any kind of DLL being loaded in any process and match and write rules, add rules that do something when that happens. Another type of activity that we can look at and analyze is network activity. So if one of your applications connects to whatever, to some kind, to an unknown port, to a specific host, to a certain IP address, stuff like that, UberAgent can react to that and generate an event in this seam in the backend. And finally, one of the event types that we do support today, when something happens in the registry, if a certain key is created, a certain value is created, changed, and so on. We're quite extensive with the types of events that we support. You can be quite specific if you want to. Yeah, whenever something that you're interested in happens, UberAgent ESA will detect that. And looking at the properties of that are available when any of these events is recorded. So for example, when the process is started, you have in your rules, or in our rules that we create for you, we have available all of the process properties. We have the applications. So for example, if the process is winword.exe, we identify the application as Microsoft Office something. You have the application version, you have the user, I think that's coming up next here. You have the permissions of the directory the process was started from. That's something I personally find quite interesting. So you have, as one of the things, for example, if standard users have write permissions on the directory the executable was launched from, you have the file hash, for example, which you can match against known bad executables. You have there seems to be some background noise. If somebody could mute themselves, thanks very much. Okay, so you have the digital signature of the executable file. We validate that, we check if it's correct, we check the signer and so on. And with information about the user, the domain, and quite a few related things. Okay, so moving on. I mentioned rules. UberAgent ships with a good number of rules, UberAgent ESA, but and you can create your own. Obviously, that all works very well. But wouldn't it be nice if you had some kind of repository where people collect information about, things that are problematic or suspicious that you want to know about? And if lots of people contributed to such a repository, and would it be great to be able to use that kind of information with UberAgent ESA? Yeah, it would be awesome. That's what we thought. So exactly that's what you have with Sigma. It's a generic signature format for SIEM systems. It supports all kinds of SIEMs and tools and so on. So for example, it supports Splunk, it supports Azure Monitor and quite a few others, Elasticsearch, if I'm not mistaken. It also supports PowerShell. And the nice thing is well, that it is an open source project. It lives on GitHub. It has hundreds of rules, or signatures, as they call it. It has hundreds, maybe even thousands of signatures for various in various categories. And anybody can take a look at the signatures, can contribute to the project. And with the converter that we have, you can convert all or just a subset of Sigma signatures to ESA rules. So that happens fully automatically. You don't have to, you just have to run a little script, that's it. And then the resulting rules can be used with ESA directly. In fact, that works so well that we are shipping a subset of Sigma signatures converted to ESA rules with the product right out of the box. And by the way, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer questions. Just raise your hand, do that kind of thing that GoToWebinar allows, and Alex, please interrupt me if I'm not seeing something that the question that people want answered. Okay, so wrapping this first part up, we have these two products, UberAgent You Exam and UberAgent ESA, and they both live in the same agent. Isn't that awesome? You don't need two different agents that both require resources, RAM, CPU, and so on the endpoint. You just got that single agent, the single package, just one thing to deploy, one thing that needs a tiny little amount of resources. The UberAgent agent, I always love that, it has been very heavily optimized for minimal resource usage. And you get two different products out of that one agent on your endpoints. And basically, also that's one of the questions and concerns we hear quite a lot from many different customers. We want to get rid of as many agents as possible, and bundling the functionality of the two products in a single agent is our way of supporting that request. And yeah, both products combined, they give you a lot of visibility into what is happening on your endpoints. As I mentioned, UXM focused on everything that's related to user experience, performance, and so on. And the new ESA security product, it adds on top of that things that are relevant and interesting and potentially dangerous from a security point of view. Okay, with that, I'll move on to a little bit different topic, and that is browsers. So, who likes, well, and I realize it's not really possible to show, ask for a show of hands, not the same way you can in a physical conference room, obviously, but yeah, this large icon, which by the way, I think it's quite beautiful. It's the icon for the new relatively new Chromium-based Edge. And Microsoft has been making a lot of progress, and I like what they're doing with the new Edge. And what we've been hearing from our customers is that they love what we do with browsers, and even more they would love support from Microsoft Edge, and that is available with UberAgent 6. So let's take a look at what that means. What UberAgent does is, well, consider your browser, the one you might be using. I'm not sure if you're using the web app of GoToWebinar or if you're using the actual client, the executable, but if you're looking at the browser that's running on your machine right now, you probably have a lot of different tabs open. Some people that are very organized, they manage to get the number of simultaneously open tabs down to like 5, 10, I don't know. Some other people, they basically use open tabs like bookmarks, and they routinely have more than 100 different tabs open in the same browser at any single point in time. So there are all kinds of ways to deal with tabs and to use tabs in some creative ways, I would say. Anyway, what you need to think of is that any single one of those many different tabs that you have open right now is running a web app. And that web app needs resources, obviously. Ever wondered why browsers like any modern browser actually, but Chrome has been known to be a resource hog for a while? Well, the others are just in the same way. Maybe not IE so much, but you can't really use IE anymore these days, so it doesn't really count. So basically, IE only needs so little resources because it has so little functionality and runs web apps. It doesn't run modern web apps anymore. But looking at a modern browser, the huge amount of RAM that the browsers typically need is because you're taxing them. You're asking the browser, hey, run 50 or 100 different apps concurrently. So, and the browser says, hey, yeah, I'll do that for you, no problem with that. But yeah, I need some place in the computer's memory to store all that stuff. So when you think about your browser like that, it basically becomes an operating system for web apps. And traditional monitoring tools, they just they show you there is a browser. Maybe there are many different processes like chrome.exe instances, for example. You can have dozens or hundreds of them. You typically have one chrome.exe instance per tab, for example. Yeah, but that's it. It's seen from the outside, a browser is but a massive resource hog. But seen from the inside, of course, well, there's a lot of stuff going on. And UberAgent comes with browser extensions that allow you to take a look at what's going on inside the browser. So, which web apps are your users running? How quickly do they load, for example? What takes up a lot of time during the when a new app or page is loaded? Usage, which apps are used how often, or what's the percentage of time users spend in this app, another app, and that works across native and web apps. So UberAgent can tell you that out of all the apps that your users spend time in, regular plain old PowerPoint, let's say, takes up 20% of all the user time, whereas your browser-based, whatever, Salesforce or something else takes up 25% of the time. So it works like that really well. And UberAgent requires a browser extension for that. And we now have extensions for all these browsers whose icons you can see here. So Chrome, the new Chromium-based Edge, Firefox, and Internet Explorer. And a new thing that we've added to the capabilities of our browser extension and web app monitoring feature set is we've been hearing from some customers that, yeah, it's nice that you show us which host or which domain the browser's hosting in a certain tab. So you might have UberAgent.com open in one of your tabs. But what if UberAgent.com hosts two different apps on the same site, on the same server, same domain, and so on? customers have been telling us they want to be able to differentiate between the two, and it makes a lot of sense. So what we've added is basically configurable level of detail, which allows you to distinguish between this scenario. You have, as I mentioned, a certain domain or URL, whatever, and you have two different apps and subdirectories, more or less, in different parts of the path. And with this configure level of detail, you can specify just how much of the URL you want UberAgent to capture. So you could ask UberAgent, yeah, please give me the first level of the path, as seen in this example. You could instruct it to give you two levels, the first two levels of the path, the entire path, whatever you need, and you can do that per domain. So you could only capture the path of your web app for a certain domain, certain intranet site, for example, and just leave it at the default for everything else. Because obviously the more data you capture, the more storage it needs, and you only want to capture as much as you really need to process later on. That also is a question of privacy and so on. So this allows you to specify just what you need and no more, no less. Also, typically you don't want to capture query parameters because sometimes they contain sensitive data. They may contain some kind of token or password, stuff like that, or search queries, search keywords the user used. So typically, you do not want to capture those, but if you want to capture a specific query parameter for a specific site, this configure level of detail will allow you to do that. And all of these features for browser and web app monitoring in the browser, they've been quite popular. And I believe part of the reason is that we, as far as I can tell, we've been the first vendor to add this kind of functionality to their monitoring product. And as of a few days ago, the usage numbers of our browser extensions were as follows. So for Chrome, we have got approximately 300,000 users. That is just the number of users that have installed our Chrome browser extension. It's not the number of users that actually are using UberAgent in total or so. It's just that Chrome extension that we have. And the number, you can look that up for yourself. It's publicly visible in the Chrome App Store. For Firefox, it's well, Chrome obviously is the most popular browser. So for Firefox, it's not so well popular, but we still have 39,000 users approximately of the Firefox extension. And regarding IE, there is no app store, so we don't have a central number that can easily be determined, but we are estimating that we have approximately 100,000 users of the Internet Explorer add-on. So that seems to be working really well for our customers, and it provides, the web app monitoring provides great data and great insights that you otherwise don't have. Okay, now moving on a little bit to yet another different topic. So we, about a year ago at another E2E VC conference, we announced that we were going to build an agent for macOS, and that's what we did. With the new macOS agent, it works in addition, obviously, to everything that we already have. So it doesn't replace our Microsoft Windows or Citrix or VMware monitoring capabilities. It just adds to that. And the great thing is there's no Apple tax. It's covered by the existing UberAgent licenses. So if you already own UberAgent, you're allowed to run to use your licenses with macOS devices too. Of course, you need to make sure you have enough of the licenses so that the additional devices are covered, but that's all. If you have user licenses, well, we allow you to choose between per user licensing and per device licensing. If you have user licensing, you just need to make sure you have enough users. If a user has a Mac and a Windows device, you just need a single user license for that user. So that should be pretty fair and make it pretty easy, basically a no-brainer for existing customers to roll out UberAgent to their Mac estate too. So what we currently have is a preview. It is available now. We are looking for feedback. So if you're an UberAgent customer or if you're interested in UberAgent, please do try out the macOS agent. Let us know what you think and tell us what you need from it. Obviously, as it is a preview, it's not finished yet, but we want to hear how it's working for you. We want to need what features you need most, what's most important for you, and so on and so on. So please play with it and let us know what you think. Okay, now moving on to yet another topic, networking. UberAgent has been monitoring the machine's network activity for a long time, but in the past we used a technology called ETW, or spelled out, that's event tracing for Windows. It's kind of a low-level monitoring technology that's built into Windows, and the tech is good. There's nothing wrong with ETW if it can provide the information that you need. And regarding network activity, it does provide a lot of information, but not everything that we need. So for example, and that was the most important aspect here for us, it doesn't provide latency information. Well, it kind of does, but not very accurate latency information. It basically just tells you, okay, this is goodish or that is badish. I hope you can say that. I do have to admit that the latency information that we did show in older versions of UberAgent, they are a bit, they're just a rough indication of if the latency is increasing. Well, obviously things are getting worse, but you can't really, it's not an exact measurement. So, and a few other important metrics that weren't available or couldn't be calculated with the ETW networking data at all. For example, how much jitter do we have, or how much packet loss is happening. So we took a pretty big step and developed our own network monitoring driver, which is kind of a complex and a complex thing to do, and it's not something you do lightly or quickly. And we're very happy that this is available now. It's stable. It's really working really well. And the great thing is now we can produce any kind of networking metric that we need and that could be interesting. We might add a few specialized metrics in the future, but right now we have added super accurate latency measurement, jitter, packet loss, and a few other related data points. So that is very good news. If you have UberAgent already, just once you upgrade to UberAgent 6, you'll get that automatically. There's nothing specific to do for you. Okay, now I've got like 5, 6, 7 minutes left, if I'm not mistaken. We had a very interesting session just before this one by Neil about Windows Virtual Desktop. And from what I can tell, Windows Virtual Desktop, people are showing a lot of interest in it. It seems to be getting quite a bit of traction. And so if you are talking about a monitoring product, the obvious question is, well, do you guys support that? Can UberAgent be used in conjunction with Windows Virtual Desktop? And well, that answer is very easy for us. Of course, you can use UberAgent with Windows Virtual Desktop. We're even a partner. So we listed on that official site showing all those solutions that have been validated to work with Windows Virtual Desktop. But basically, that was just a formality. UberAgent can be used and supports basically any use case, any product out there. If it is Nutanix Frame, if it is Citrix, Horizon, anything else that is out there, we support it, we work with it, and obviously physical desktops as well. Don't forget physical. Virtual is still a niche case. Most of the very large customers, they have about, just guessing, well, just a rough estimate here, they have between 20 and 30% of virtualized desktops, apps and desktops, but the majority of users are on physical devices, laptops, desktops, all kinds of physical devices, and UberAgent is really good with that too. So we basically support all of your platforms and use cases. That's what I'd like to say and stress with this slide. Now, regarding data storage, UberAgent doesn't have its own backend. It comes with support for 4 different backends, and none of those are databases, by the way, which is, well, I guess the modern approach, not to use a classic relational database like you did with products like in the 90s or like still maybe 10 years ago. Instead, all of these are various types of big data platforms. Splunk is probably the best known of the bunch, and we have the best support for it. The reason for that is that Splunk has the best capabilities when it comes to visualization. So we do ship more than, I think these days it's more than 60 dashboards as part of a Splunk app. That's super easy to deploy. It's basically just a a file copy operation. It can be done via Splunk's web UI. You just upload a single file, single zip archive to the Splunk server, and that's it. And all of a sudden you get all those great dashboards that show you all the data that UberAgent collects in a very easy and intuitive manner. We do fully support the other platforms, Elasticsearch, Azure Monitor, and Apache Kafka too, but we don't have dashboards for them because, well, mostly because the dashboarding capabilities are not good enough. It's tough to say, but yeah, that's how it is. We recently published a blog article series, four-part article series about the dashboarding capabilities of Azure Monitor. It's available on uberagent.com. My colleague Dominic, he looked at various ways you can visualize data in Azure Monitor, including Grafana, by the way. And he analyzes the pros and cons and what is available in which kind of visualization technology in detail. So if you're interested into Azure Monitor or into that kind of visualization stuff, please do take a look at our blog on uberagent.com. You should find it interesting. So with regards to the backends, we've improved our code a lot recently with the work we did on UberAgent 6. So that is not something that you can see because it's the way the agent is architected has improved internally, which is probably a boring thing for you because it doesn't give you any new metrics, it doesn't give you new graphs or anything. But well, this new type safety that we introduced is, we did a lot of wrangling internally, and the great thing is for customers that it results not only in easier and better support across backends, but in better agent performance as well. So when you're sending a lot of data via some kind of REST API via HTTP or HTTPS, the agent is a lot faster and needs less resources doing that. So all in all, less overhead for the agent, which is of course always a good thing. Okay, now I'll be wrapping up, just 1 or 2 minutes left if I'm correct. So what's the roadmap to UberAgent 6? Where do we stand? Well, right now the first beta is available. It has been for, I'm not sure actually, for about a month, maybe a little bit more. So please download it on uberagent.com. Try it out. Let us know what you think. We are very interested to hear about your thoughts. There will be a beta 2 in sometime in July. So we're preparing it more or less, but not right now. We're not working on a Saturday, but it should be ready in pretty soon. And after beta 2, there's going to be the final release, approximately in August. So it's not very far away. Okay, that's all I have. I'm ready to answer any questions if there are any, and if there's still time for that. Thank you very much. And of course, you can find more information on our website, uberagent.com, and please follow us on Twitter. The alias is UberAgent app. So thank you.